You want to take a picture together? Stiamo così. Thank you. Thank you. Buonasera a tutti.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this round table entitled, somewhat provocatively, Feeding the Person, Nourishing Hope, Hunger, Waste, and Sustainable Development. I'm very honored to coordinate this round table of very authoritative people whom I'd like to introduce to you very briefly. Erthain on my right, very recently she has been appointed the Executive Director of the World Food Programme. And then we have Graziano da Silva, General Director of the FAO. He has recently been appointed also. And we have Dr. Sala, the CEO of the company Expo. And I have left for last a friend, Staffan de Mistura, whom you all know. Only recently, FAO launched an alarm, which was published by some more attentive newspapers, an alarm that has underlined that several concauses will lead to an alarming increase in the prices of main staple foods. They're talking about 6% increase in a situation which is already not very easy. And if we look and try and trace who in such a globalized world with the means of communication we have, the first to launch an alarm on the possible terrible disaster because of hunger, I found a radio message of 4th of April 1946 by Pius XII. And this message said, almost a quarter of the world's population, there is the shadow of hunger through immense districts that risk cutting down and sweeping away entire multitudes. I was very struck by Pius XII's sensitivity to the issue and how much progress we have made in the fight against hunger, but how much more progress we have to make. And it gives me great pleasure with these authoritative guests today to be able to have a debate which will allow us to go in depth into this dramatic passage that I have just read. And we have two new general directors here who have come from important experience in their respective countries, the USA and Brazil, and where they have had experience in social commitment. Erthain was the president of the Food Bank of the US, and Graziano is the developer of, the implementer of the program Zero Hunger. Now I'd like to start with Erthain. And I'd like to ask her, please, how, starting from this important background and experience you have, how do you think you can implement and give impetus to this great organization, which is the World Food Programme? And looking especially at two things. First of all, how is it possible to involve increasingly the civil society which is present in these countries and which will allow us to reach the infrastructure that the world has created, and also get to that last mile, and also with all the food commodities that are available in the areas where the World Food Programme acts.
Buonasera. Buonasera. Grazie. Più parlo. No. I will not try and speak at all in Italian. My Italian is brutal. So if you will, with much apologies, please allow me to speak in English. Let me begin by thanking Alberto for this opportunity to participate. This is probably the fourth time since I became executive director that I've had the opportunity to speak on a panel or in conjunction with the FAO Director General, José Graziano de Silva. It is my second time as executive director to participate on a panel with the CEO of Expo 2015, Giuseppe Sala. And it is always a pleasure to have the opportunity not just to sit on a panel with, but to simply be in the presence of my very good friend, Staffan di Mistura. And so I thank you all for allowing me to speak with you this evening. WFP in 2011 provided food and food assistance for 100 million people in 75 countries. This effort was led by the 14,000 people who work with FAO every day. But we recognize that the work of feeding the most vulnerable, the poor, the hungry, cannot be achieved by one organization working alone. Not even if when we work in partnership with the other UN organizations. Every year, we work with 2,000 NGOs. And it is only with the support of those 2,000 NGOs who represent millions of people from around the world that we have succeeded in feeding the 100 million people. But that is still not enough. We, as a community of people who care, and each and every one of you in this room represent those people who care around the world by your presence here today. We recognize that it is only through working together that we can build the resilience that will ensure that organizations like WFP are no longer necessary because we build the resilience. We build a resilience for people, for women, for families to feed their own children. In the history of the world, never have young people been so connected as they are today. Through the internet, through the tools that the internet provide, whether it is Facebook or Twitter or all the other tools that you are so well aware of that I could never begin to even list. Through these tools, you overcome the barriers of language, of geographic differences, of cultural differences. And when you come together in the spirit of making a difference, the opportunity for us to build a resilience that will ensure that we do end hunger becomes a reality. The question that was asked is from my own personal experiences. Why do I believe this is possible, and what do I bring to this challenge? You have heard that in the introduction that I was in the leadership of the food banks in the United States. But what you didn't hear was that I was also very much a part of voter registration drives across the country to ensure that people who had never voted before would have the opportunity to vote. Organizing efforts to ensure that women, particularly poor women, would have rights to ensure that they could educate their children. And when I was very young, I worked for baby seals to ensure that they could live without having them butchered for their coats. The similarity in all of this work is my central belief that people make the difference. That people working together, committed to achieve a common result for the common good, can overcome all obstacles. There are those who argue that we have had hunger for as long as there have been men on earth. But that should be no reason for it to continue. We together can make the difference. There is an exhibit here in this hall on the construction of the Duomo in Milan. The citizens of Milan believed that through work, innovation, training, research and development, and a commitment to a goal, that they could build the greatest cathedral of its time. It is with that same spirit, those same tools, working together, the innovation that young people can bring to this goal, research and development to ensure that we can create the seeds that I'm sure that my friend José Graziano will talk about, that will ensure that people can grow the food that is necessary to feed their own children. And an unrestricted desire to achieve the goal. That together we can end hunger. And that is what I believe, and that is what I bring to WFP, and why I believe that this organization makes a difference. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Grazie Erthain.
Thank you very much, Erthain. This comparison of a common good and the building of the Milan Cathedral, I think, is a very good comparison. I confess that we of the AVSI Foundation have worked in many countries in the world with the World Food Programme in conditions of catastrophes and severe food insecurity. We've also had the opportunity of collaborating with the FAO, with the farmer field schools. We have a program in Myanmar at the moment. Now, giving the floor to Graziano, I think that Erthain has already introduced a cooperation which is something perhaps more. Perhaps it's a conception at the very beginning, and not just the civil society as the implementer of other people's policies. Perhaps it's a crucial passage. The many public policies against hunger that Graziano de Silva has developed for Brazil can help us to understand this link. Thank you very much.
Not to speak in Italian. I can understand perfect, but I'm not trying to speak in this moment. Perhaps next year. Sì, il fatto mio nonno è di Calabria.
My father, in fact, my grandfather comes from Calabria.
My father is from Calabria, so I am trying to be able to speak Italian next time. I'm very glad to be here with Erthain. I believe that this is just one more debate that we will be together in the forthcoming year, because we are supporting the same cause to eradicate hunger. That's possible. I'm very glad also to the second time to meet Mr. Staffan de Mistura in the same issue, and with Mr. Giuseppe Sala that will be supporting the Expo Milano 2015 with our efforts together of the UN system. I would like to, in fact, say a few things based on my experience. First of all, what I believe is the most important role of civil society. I feel that civil society has a complementary role was the governments. We should avoid it to try to substitute governments, but to act to complement their work, and even to help the governments to do better the work they try to do. There are some things that only civil society can do, and that it can help a lot governments doing that work. Let me share with you the experience that we had when we launched the Zero Hunger program in Brazil. By the way, we have the book of the history of the Zero Hunger available in the internet to be downloaded in English and Portuguese. I will leave a copy with my friend Alberto Piatti that has invited me and give this opportunity to explain to you.
Thanks a lot.
And the experience that I would like to report to all of you was that when President Lula took the decision to give all Brazilians 3 meals a day, what means that each Brazilian would be able to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner before going to bed. That simple way of saying the things was embraced by the whole society in Brazil. And we started to receive a lot of questions how we can collaborate. So we set a council with the church, with the farmers, with the unions, all together joined the government with their proposals to be considered. That is the Hunger Zero. All these proposals joining together became what is called the Hunger Zero. Nothing more than that. Things that we were working on the ground, and we decided to scale up at the national level and implemented them together with the government and civil society. But at that time, we faced a specific problem that is sometimes difficult to understand. Our figure shows that we had at that time more or less 50 million people in Brazil unnourished, under hunger, but we were not able to find them. That was the first problem that we got. We were not able to find the hunger people. You know why? The really hunger people are invisible. They don't have a number. They don't have a bank account. They don't have a card of identification. Most of them, they don't have an address that we can find. So for the government, they are invisible. We could not touch them. We could not get to their house. We don't know where they live. We don't have a list. So I asked the civil society to help me to elaborate in each village, in each county, a list of the most poor families of the village. Particularly the church, or the church, I would say, played a very important role. The São Vicente de Paula, I don't know how to... we work in the Vale do Jequitinhonha, that was the let's say, the Somalia region in Brazil at that time, that we could not achieve by car because there were no roads, a mountain region, and we have been able in 2 months to report back the list of the poorest people in that region. But there is even one more important role that civil society can play in the hunger combat, is being the voice of the hunger. You will not find a union of hunger people. You will not find hunger people organized in cooperatives, in associations. They don't have newspaper, they don't have radio, they don't have even representative because they don't vote. So being the voice of the hunger, speaking their behalf, it's very important. And be sure that the hunger people is not a man or a woman that will combat in their behavior, that will not ask for their rights. Hunger people are people submitted, that will not raise their hands. This is a different kind of oppression. It's a kind of, not a political oppression, that you can revolt against it and organize against it. Hunger people are people without hope. And when you get the hope of the people, you get their citizens. We get their, let's say, hope to fight for a better world. So give them again this hope, give them again this opportunity to fight for their better world, for a world without hunger. Telling them that it's possible, telling them that we already produce enough food today to feed all the people in the world. And despite that, we have at near 900 million people suffering hunger. This is something that only civil society can do. I thank you, Alberto, this opportunity.
Grazie. Ma mi pare.
Well, I think that we have seen introduced a connection with the title, a connection which is important first in the first and in the second presentation, because somebody who is hungry, we have just heard, no longer has hope. And I love to repeat this very synthetic expression of Benedict XVI with regard to the innate dignity that every human being has and the relation that every person has with the infinite. And certainly a person who is starving and doesn't have the possibility of having access to food for whatever reason, this innate dignity is very hard to develop. But we don't want just to feed people, we want to feed their hope. And again, in Caritas Veritate, the Pope says something which is very important. We have to have an effective change of mentality, he says, which induces us to adopt new lifestyles in which the search for the beauty and truth among men in common growth will be the basis for our choice of goods and our choice of lifestyle. I think that the extraordinary experience and expectation of Expo 2015 can be an enormously good opportunity to make this effect and have this effect on our lifestyles, not just for the people who are directly concerned, but pass the message out throughout the community. And before I give the floor to Giuseppe Sala, I'd like to underline one further thing. This is the first Expo in which there is a very strong effort going on for there not to be just official government delegations, but also representatives of the civil society. Thank you very much. Thank you for this very warm welcome and your attentive listening to our work, which I hope will extend to what we do. Expo is a great event. It is in the facts of what we're doing, but it's more than that. It's something that really brings out the institutions and the governments, and they're on show. And this is something which, in fact, has a history of 100-odd years. 2010 in Shanghai, in 2015 in Milan, in 2020 there are candidate cities like Dubai and Sao Paulo. So the expos have been going on for a century now. And the thing is that we have to translate these into the signs of the times. So it's a great event. And I am sincerely convinced that it's a great opportunity for our country, Italy. We want to have 140 countries present. A few minutes ago, we heard that the Ghana, in fact, is added to this now. And in 2015, in those 6 months, at late 100 heads of state will come to our country. And you who are of the business, you know that, in fact, how important this is.
Also, the political world has addressed Italy. Our goal is to give an interpretation of all this according to our times. It's no longer time to interpret things in the old ways. There was just one expo in Italy in 1906 in Milan. The main topic was transportation. Through St. Gothard, it was possible to link directly Milan to Paris. That was the meaning of that expo in 1906. What we appreciate is that today an event like this should not come from the logic of being in line with the progress at all costs. Of course, we try and have a progress-oriented view, but uncontrolled progress is no longer enough to make us state that we will live in a world which is adequate for us. So the logic turns from transportation, or the focus turns from transportation to nutrition. Men use the planet to derive resources for nutrition, but now the planet wants an effort on our part to continue playing this role. Of course, we are moving along a pathway which is in parallel with others. Of course, many problems which relate to this topic are speeding up. You know about the Millennium Goals. 2015 is the deadline, you know, by chance. Recently, I was in Rio, and what was said there is that we will not be able to achieve those goals. This doesn't mean that everything was done useless, but certainly there's a moment of economic downturn. There's a situation where climate changes, the water, etc., the increasing population represent a problem. 7 billion people today. We had 1 billion in 1900, and in 2040 we will be 10 billion. So very complex issues. The point is, in our opinion, it's meaningless to have someone say his or her own truth. It's not possible for anyone. In a world which has so many uncertainties, this is not at all possible. What we believe may work is contribution by all, a sort of open platform, a sort of modern public place, an agora in Greek, where the civil society has a word to say. And people's participation is very important. You're an example here today. You're here because you're interested in the topics, but I think also because you feel you can have a voice on what is going to happen. You feel you can contribute to this. This is what we're going to offer for 6 months. A platform, an open platform to collect opinions, views and thoughts. We will not provide answers, or we will only give answers in part. We will try to provide people with adequate knowledge on some issues. There are huge problems linked to nutrition. We could talk about GMOs. Everybody talks about them, but nobody knows what they are. Or the water. You know, the water is really a very topical issue. Some months ago, the Chinese Prime Minister Wen Jiabao announced investments for 500 million euros for the water problems in China. In the press, you see also latent conflicts between India and Pakistan because they take resources from the Indus River. 90% of the water resources of Pakistan for farms come from that river. And since the Indians built their electric power plants, the capacity of the river has reduced. In Bozen, in the north of Italy, the mayor is cutting the water supplies. So there's a whole series of issues which lead us to say that we can direct this discussion in the right way and focusing on what is important to people. Then there's something which relates to domain. We don't think that Italy will come to Expo simply to be educated. We need to find adequate formulas. We're making efforts towards this. There has to be education and entertainment, having fun, visiting the Expo. Of course, technology will help us. Let me give you a small example of how the Expo takes place. When a country adheres to this and decides to bring its knowledge on nutrition, usually there is a collection of ideas inside that country to decide what should be expressed. Switzerland is a country ahead of all. They launched this European competition of ideas. They received 120 proposals. And then, being Swiss, they did everything very well. On the one hand, you had the proposals, and then in separate envelopes, the name of the studio that was presenting the proposals. The winner was a small studio in Switzerland. Switzerland will have a common space. Imagine something like an exhibit or a place for debate, and then there will be glass silos filled with individual raw materials, for example, grains of rice. They will take this opportunity or this excuse to convey two messages. On the one hand, you have the educational part. So they will show where rice is going, how new rice crops will be like, and how rice will be cultivated in different climates. And then there will be a sort of cock, a tap in the silo. The people can take as much rice away that they want, but the Swiss say once the silo is empty, we will add no more grains of rice. This introduces the theme of scarcity of resources and need to have different behaviors. Imagine that each country will have a different way of proposing things at the expo. This platform, this stage, will allow us, I think, in 6 months' time to induce everybody, countries, civil societies, politicians, etc., to do more. Those who work for Expo, and this is what I'm trying to show my people, must serve the others, must have this spirit of serving the others, so that our country can be at the center of this very important debate. Let me close now, and here I would like to go back to what my friend Graziano da Silva said in relation to what hungry people think. Let me mention the words of a woman that experienced this prophetically and directly, Mother Teresa. Her words are, there are many people in the world who die of hunger, but an even higher number of people die because of lack of love. Everyone must know that he or she is loved and desired and important for God. There's hunger of love and of God. Thank you.
Vi è fame di amore, vi è fame di Dio.
The love of God and the love of love, and the hunger for love and hunger for God.
Mi sento a casa qui.
I feel at home here. This is the third time that I have come, and every time that I leave the meeting, I'm energized, and I know that I speak on behalf of my colleagues and friends.
Eravamo parlati, non ci eravamo
We didn't arrange this beforehand, but I'd like to tell you, if you allow me, an anecdote
ricalcata.
regarding Mother Teresa. On the message that we're hearing and that we have heard from those who with great authority have given this in the various questions that we have to deal with, links up with the whole theme of the meeting. At the end of the day, all these enormous problems do have a solution, but they seem interminable. For 42 years now, I have worked with the United Nations in 18 war areas and in hunger areas when India and China had their own famines, and it seemed impossible that things would change, but things have changed. Things can change, things have to change, on the condition that we link up with that energy of the message of the infinite. And this is where the anecdote comes in. Fly with me backwards, geographically and also in time.
In Sudan?
Come back with me to Sudan in 86. The Christian city of Juba was besieged. The city was besieged and the population was starved. Nobody was moving. The government didn't do anything because at the end of the day, it didn't want to show that it was incapable of saving the city. And the guerrillas, in fact, even if it had people in that city, its own people, they didn't want to do anything because there was a garrison there. The world wanted to do something. I was working with the World Food Programme at the time, and my consultant was a colleague from the FAO. And the message was, well, we've got to do something. Let's make an appeal. And we did that, and we got a plane, but the guerrillas had rockets that, in fact, shot down planes. They would seek out the planes through heat, and they'd already done it twice, so it wasn't easy to get near. Okay, we told the guerrillas that we were willing to bring food in a program which was called the Rainbow Program. And every nation had its own color. That was why it was rainbow. And we announced the route, the time, the hour, and the guerrillas says, well, we'll shoot you out of the sky nonetheless. And we said, the government said, we're really mad with you, Mistura, because you're making us embarrassed. And the UN said to me, well, aren't you perhaps annoying people a bit too much? Well, that evening, literally, we saw literally appear, Mother Teresa of Calcutta. I'd never seen her. I didn't even recognize her. And she was followed by a nun called Mirgila, I remember. Both of them presented themselves, and with a very direct manner, she said, well, I'm here to help.
Gandolfo,
Yesterday at Castel di Gandolfo, the popes, in fact, saw a group of people, young people, I was already 40, who wanted to save the town of Juba. And I decided to go and to help.
I decided to stop there while I was going to Kenya. Well, it was very complex. Then I said, can I speak to the guerrilla people or the president? They said the guerrilla people are in the jungle, and the president is not there. He's in the States. Let's talk to Ronald. He's a good guy. Who? Ronald Reagan, and his wife too. Well, in those times, we did not have telephones or cell phones. I contacted the operator. Then I was put in contact with the operator of the White House, and then I said, I'm de Mistura from the WFP. Mother Teresa is here with me. She would like to talk to Ronald Reagan. The operator said, well, today we've had other people wanting to speak to him. At least the service official. So he was on the phone. I said, please tell me when Mother Teresa met President Reagan. She looked and said, February the 7th, when there was an inauguration of the official opening of a church in Washington. At that point, our friend from the desk office called me sir, which was more respectful. And then he said, tell me when it was the last time that Nancy Reagan met Mother Teresa. Well, she was in New York at the official opening of a hospice. There was silence. At some point, he said, the president wants to talk to Mother Teresa, but in 1 hour's time at the embassy. It was the final check. If we could enter the embassy, then everything was fine. I rushed to the embassy. It was closed. I went to a cocktail where the American ambassador was there. I went to the ambassador, his name was George, and said, look, I've got Mother Teresa with me. In 47 minutes, President Reagan will call. He said, you know, Staffan, it's very hot here in Sudan, and one of the main symptoms when you are dehydrated is a slight fibrillation of your legs, and then tremor, and then if you don't take water and salt, you start saying crazy things, and you need a glass of water and salt. No, you take it, because really let me introduce Mother Teresa to you, I said. Well, she was irritated. She was an action woman, and she said, so what? The ambassador almost had a heart attack. He rushed to the embassy. There was everybody there, the Marines, etc., and everybody was looking at the phone, which was supposed to ring. Mother Teresa said, let's pray, and we all had a rosary, including the Marines, waiting for that telephone call. The phone rang. The ambassador said, Mr. President, perhaps he had not even met him for a long time. Reagan would never call the ambassador in Sudan. I'm George, he said. I'm pleased to talk to you. Yes, Mother Teresa is here. Let me give her to you. Mother Teresa spoke to President Reagan as if he was a small student. Well, are you promising me we have to do this and this? Would you send me a telex for confirmation? I asked Mother Teresa what happened, and she said, he agrees he will put pressure on the Sudan president that this aircraft leaves. But unfortunately, the president has already left to the UN in New York. But George Bush, his deputy, is going to come and send a confirmation telex. The telex arrived the next day, the next morning, and the telex said, I did what I want, what you want, Mother Teresa. My deputy, George Bush, spoke to President, and he said that he never attempted to stop the aircraft. Indeed, he was. And he completely agreed that that aircraft, that WFP aircraft could reach Juba. The aircraft left. It had to fly high for the missiles to watch. With an old DC-9 full of food, we were able to land in Juba. And since then, Juba was never under siege again. The message is we can make whatever effort, but what needs the extraordinary strength of the concrete faith that Mother Teresa taught us. Thank you.
Grazie infinite, Staffan.
Thank you very much, Staffan. Mother Teresa is watching us from heaven. She will certainly smile at this episode. Let me draw your attention or take your time, your last 3 or 4 minutes of this session for a quick answer. This title of the Rimini meeting, which is so provocative and evocative at the same time, this link of the human being with the infinite, this nature of the human beings and their relationship with the infinite, this hope, how does all this affect your work?
Thank you. A very wise man once said, to the parent of a hungry child, a piece of bread is the face of God. The World Food Program receives no assessed contributions from any government. Each year, we raise approximately $3.5 to $4 billion from governments, from private sector, from individuals. It is the generosity, the awareness that the geography of the hungry should not define our compassion, that ensures that we continue to have the resources to provide the support necessary to feed the most hungry, the most vulnerable. It is the recognition of individuals that their governments then respond to in providing the financial support and assistance. But that spirit is not of a country. It is not of a particular place. It is the spirit that drives the support that we receive comes from each of us because we all believe. No matter to whom we pray, we all recognize the responsibility that we have to serve as the response to ensure that no mother must look into the face of her child and not have the ability to feed that child. Thank you.
Well, let me take this 3-4 minutes to tell you what I spoke with His Holiness the Pope Benedict in our meeting this June. In the beginning of the month, the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called me to ask my opinion about taking the opportunity of the meeting in Rio, the Rio Plus 20, to launch a huge campaign against hunger. And I said, well, it would be great, but we need partners, strong partners, not only the UN system alone, but you have my full support. And as I'm going to meet the Pope in some days more, I will ask him also the support. And during the audience with His Holiness, I had the opportunity to raise this Zero Hunger Challenge that he immediately embraced and give the support of the whole church to work on this in the forthcoming years. The Zero Hunger Challenge has 4 main dimensions. The first one is to combat child malnutrition. This is particularly important in those moments of crisis, like we face today. The child is the most affected those days, especially because we have the tendency to substitute the fruits, vegetable, milk and other products by energetic products from sugar, dulces, sweets and gaseous, etc. So it's not only the undernourished that affects children during crisis, but also obesity become a very important problem those days. The second is to support small farmers. We have 500 million small farmers around the world, most of them at subsistence level, that are not able to produce even enough to feed their family. If we could be able to improve their production, their productivity, we would easily find enough food to feed all the world. Not only now, but even in the future. We need to look to the small farmers not as part of the problem, but as part of the solution for the hunger. The third dimension is to find a more sustainable way to improve production. Nowadays we can produce more, but we are affecting so huge natural resource that this is not sustainable. And the last point that I would like also to invite you to join us is that we need to reduce food loss and waste. Food waste nowadays, especially in developed countries, are more or less 1/3 of all the food that we eat. If we could avoid the waste of food in our meals, in our restaurants, through food banks, to different cultures of eating, not to eat so much meat, not to eat so much products that demand huge efforts and water to produce, we would be able to share more food with others. So I would ask you to support this Zero Hunger Challenge and join us in this effort to change the way we produce and the way we eat food, to make faithful that we can have food for all in the short time. Thank you.
Con l'accordo
With the agreement of Giuseppe, Sala and Staffan, I'd like to make two short considerations by way of conclusion. The first is an objective that I had secretly set myself, and I had proposed these to them, and that is to come closer to these very important international institutions that play such an important role, as we have seen and heard, to bring them closer to us as a community, how we can be an active part and cooperators with them, but at the same time discover that the institutional role, in fact, is led by people who have given their lives to and dedicated their lives to what they do. At the same time, we have also understood that the problem of hunger has another very severe problem which accompanies it always in parallel, and that is education. Education to freedom and education to the meaning of life. Education also from a scholastic point of view. The last citation of my agronomist friend, Graziano, there are 500 million small farmers in the world, and they are a resource. If we can reach them and help them to develop those resources they potentially have, they are part of the solution. We hope that in the next few years we'll be able to invite you back again, and that we can continue this dialogue with the agent, people and people. Thank you all very much, and good evening.